The southern tip of Africa, a rugged coastline, a place of promise and tension. East of the Cape, along the wind-swept shores, lay a small inlet, Algoa Bay. Here, in 1820, amid uncertainty and ambition, Port Elizabeth, modern-day Gqeberha, would be born. A city forged by sea, soil, and the struggles of empire. But the story begins earlier. By the 1790s, the Dutch East India Company, the VOC, was crumbling. Britain, fearing revolutionary France, moved fast. The Battle of Muizenberg in 1795 secured the territory, but peace was fragile. Inland, the frontier districts of Swellendam and graaff-reinet declared independence. European rivalries had spilled onto African soil, and the Cape was a colony on edge. Amid this atmosphere of rebellion and uncertainty, the British sought to strengthen their hold along the eastern frontier. A small force was dispatched to Algoa Bay, remote but strategically vital. Their task? To build a fort overlooking the anchorage, to deter invasion and assert imperial presence. So in 1799, Fort Frederick rose above the bay, a modest square of stone and cannon, named for the Duke of York. Its guns were never fired in anger, yet its purpose was clear, to guard against threats, both real and imagined. Around it stretched empty coastline and wild brush, the edge of empire, silent but watchful. 2 decades later, Algoa Bay began to attract a new kind of presence. These were the 1820 settlers, families and individuals carrying hopes, faith and ambition across the sea. They strengthened the British presence in the Eastern Cape, building on footholds such as Grahamstown, founded in 1812, featured in an earlier video. Settlement along the frontier helped to secure the colony amid ongoing tensions with the Xhosa people. Between the 10th and 25th of June 1820, more than 1,000 men, over 600 women, and just over 1,000 children were set ashore on the sandy beach below the fort, all without a single incident. On the 6th of June 1820, in a gesture that would leave a lasting mark on the city, Acting Governor Sir Ruthven Donkin named the new settlement Port Elizabeth, in honour of his late wife, Elizabeth Frances Markham, who had recently died during Donkin's previous post in India. Today, Elizabeth's memory endures in the obelisk that Donkin erected near Donkin Lighthouse, a solemn sentinel watching over the bay. The lighthouse itself has guided ships safely along the treacherous coastline since 1861. By the mid-1820s, Port Elizabeth was beginning to take shape beyond its sandy shores. The town had grown steadily since the arrival of the first settlers, and visitors took note. Diplomat Edmund Roberts recorded that what had once been 4 houses in the 1820s had now expanded to over 100, with more than 1,200 residents calling the settlement home. Growth continued with the arrival of another 500 settlers in 1825, including families and notable figures such as Reverend Francis McClelland, who would become the colony's chaplain. These newcomers brought not only labour and skills, but also faith, education, and a sense of community, reinforcing the fledgling town's foundations. As the town grew, so did its streets and buildings. Main Street became the nerve centre of the settlement, lined with shops, markets and meeting places that reflected the town's ambition. By the late 19th century, Port Elizabeth was shedding its image as a remote coastal outpost and stepping into its role as a bustling port and civic centre. Among its landmark buildings was the stately City Hall, rising proudly as a symbol of municipal governance. The Grand Library, crowned with a domed interior and watched over outside by a statue of Queen Victoria, stood as a reminder of the city's ties to the British Empire. The Opera House, another jewel of the era, became the cultural heart of the city and remains the only 19th century opera house still standing in South Africa. The Grey Institute, established in the 1850s, served as a key centre for education and civic gatherings, reflecting the town's growing commitment to learning, culture and public life. These edifices, alongside markets, churches and public squares, were more than architecture. They were statements of confidence, reflections of a community taking shape, asserting itself on the southern African coast. In the latter half of the 19th century, Port Elizabeth's transformation accelerated. John Molteno, the Cape Colony's first Prime Minister, championed infrastructure and commerce, and the completion of the railway to the diamond fields of Kimberley in 1885 brought new life to the city. Goods, people and ideas flowed with unprecedented speed, linking the coast to the mineral-rich interior. The port itself expanded alongside the town, evolving from a modest anchorage into a thriving hub of maritime trade. Ships loaded and unloaded commodities that fueled industry and growth, while warehouses and docks reshaped the waterfront. Algoa Bay became a gateway for commerce, and Port Elizabeth earned the nickname Liverpool of South Africa for its bustling maritime activity and economic vitality. Port Elizabeth's growth was not just in buildings and commerce, it was in its people. Xhosa communities, long present in the region, and Malay immigrants brought to the Cape during the colonial period contributed to the cultural and economic life of the city. As the town expanded, transport within it became essential. The introduction of tramways and trams connected neighbourhoods, markets and the waterfront, making the city more navigable and fostering a sense of shared urban life. Children watched the trams clatter along the tracks. Merchants relied on them to move goods, and residents felt the rhythm of a city moving forward, literally and figuratively. The trams were more than transport. They became a symbol of Port Elizabeth's modernisation, linking its people and shaping everyday life. At the turn of the 20th century, Port Elizabeth's strategic location made it a key hub during the Second Boer War of 1899 to 1902. The port became a vital transit point for British soldiers, horses and supplies moving by railway to the front lines. Horses, essential to the army, were carefully winched off ships at the dock, a delicate operation that highlighted the importance of the city's maritime infrastructure. After the war, the city sought to honour the silent heroes of the conflict, the horses. On the 11th of February 1905, a monument was unveiled to commemorate the 300,000 military horses that had perished during the campaign, with the mayor presiding over the ceremony. Built in 1907, the Prince Alfred's Guard Memorial, located in St George's Park, stands as a tribute to the soldiers of the Prince Alfred's Guard who lost their lives in South Africa's early frontier and colonial wars. Then, in 1908, disaster. Torrential rains swelled the rivers and streams feeding into the town, turning streets into rivers and sweeping through homes and businesses. Bridges and roads were damaged, and the bustling port struggled against the unrelenting waters. Residents watched as the flood reshaped familiar streets and public spaces. Despite the destruction, the flood also demonstrated the community's determination. Citizens banded together to repair homes, clear debris, and restore the flow of commerce. The event became a landmark in the city's collective memory. As the city matured, its streets and squares reflected the city's growing civic pride and cultural life. The Hill Presbyterian Church and the Methodist Church served as centres of faith, while the Cathedral of St Mary the Virgin shaped the skyline and hosted important ceremonies. Cultural institutions preserved the city's heritage and promoted learning. Bayworld and the Historical Museum documented the maritime and natural history of the region. Donkin Terrace offered sweeping views of the bay and still features many of the city's landmark homes. And the Humewood Hotel welcomed travellers, reflecting the hospitality of the growing town. Like the city's suburb of Humewood, it's named after William Hume, an influential 1820 settler. Modern developments, like the Boardwalk Mall and Convention Centre, complemented historic buildings, weaving past and present into a cohesive urban landscape. Red pillar boxes help preserve the city's unmistakable British character, offering a tangible connection to the lives and routines of residents long ago. In the 20th century, Port Elizabeth played an important role in South Africa's social and political history. The city was associated with figures such as Steve Biko, a leader of the Black Consciousness movement, whose work and activism originated in the Eastern Cape and had national significance. In 2021, the city officially changed its name from Port Elizabeth to Gqeberha, adapting the Xhosa name for the Barkans River. The change was intended to reflect South Africa's indigenous heritage, but it also sparked fierce opposition, reflecting the ongoing negotiation between history, identity, and modern governance in the city and across the country. From the remote cliffs of Algoa Bay to the bustling streets of modern Port Elizabeth, or Gqeberha, the city has grown through centuries of challenge, change, and determination. Its forts, streets, and buildings tell the stories of settlers and sailors, immigrants and merchants, of resilience in the face of floods and the sweep of history. Today, the city, South Africa's fifth largest, stands as a place where past and present converge, bearing the marks of all who have shaped it.